Hi everybody, Inspector Tom with Codes to Know, where we are saving the world one code at a time. Today we are talking about attic framing. And attic framing is pretty straightforward in the sense that it doesn't change a lot. It's been pretty much the same. I'd call it an evolution over the last probably 3 decades, not a revolution. So we're not covering every code, we're covering some of the big ones, the ones that you can go out and take a look at your own job site and figure out whether they're following the standards or not, figure out if you got a problem. So we got a bunch to cover. We're going to cover this many codes in that short a period of time. Let's roll. So let's start at the top of the attic and go from there. First thing the IRC calls out is the height of the ridge board. Ridge board needs to be at least 1 inch thick. That's not a problem. Everyone I've ever seen has been using 2x dimensional lumber. The other provision is that the length of the ridge board has to be greater than the cross-cut end of the rafter it serves. Well, let's say that you take a 2x6 as a rafter and you cut it at a fairly steep angle. It might be 7 1/4 inches long. The ridge board has to be longer than that. So in that case, the ridge board probably need to be a 2x8. So let's talk about what the IRC has to say about hips and valleys. This is a hip and this is a valley. Now, pretty much the same as a ridge board in that it's got to be 2-inch dimensional lumber and it's got to be deeper than the cross-cut ends of the rafters they serve. The big difference is the rafters don't have to offset and be directly across from each other. Let's say that your attic's got a longer rafter span. Often you'll see what are called purlins or midpoint supports. A couple of things the IRC calls out. So the first thing the IRC calls out is that whatever size dimensional lumbers are being used in the rafter has to be used in the purlin. Let's say, for example, 2x6, got to have 2x6 in your purlins. Second, they can't be angled less than 45 degrees. So put them 45 degrees to 90 degrees, you're good. Below 45 degrees, the concern is that they could collapse in on themselves. The next attic framing detail that the IRC calls out is rafter placement on that ridge board. And basically, they should be facing each other. It allows for 1.5 inches of variance, but that's it. Collar ties are pretty straightforward. They're used to connect rafters together, help reduce rafter sag. Standards on those, according to the IRC, they're supposed to be located in the upper third of the attic and not supposed to be more than 4 feet apart. If the end of the rafter is sitting on wood, it has to have at least 1.5 inches of bearing or sitting on that wood. And if it's sitting on concrete, it has to have a minimum of 3 inches. The IRC is pretty specific about putting in openings in the roof and ceiling framing, which makes sense, right? You don't want to start chopping up and cutting up all the work that you've done at that point and destabilizing that area. So what they say is, as long as the opening does not exceed 4 feet, then you can frame it out, trimmer and header joists of less than 4 feet. You can just use a single one. If you go past a 4-foot opening, you have to double that up and run 2 boards all the way around those header and trimmer joists. So what is an attic, right? And it's not some random metaphysical conversation. It's defined by the IRC as having 30 square feet of opening and 30 inches in height. That's an attic. So now that the IRC has given a definition of what an attic is, they've also specified what type of openings and what type of access you should have to an attic. So let me go through those. First, the attic opening should be located in a hallway or any other location that provides ready access. Where located in a wall, the opening has to be no less than 22 inches wide and 30 inches high. Where access is located in a ceiling, unobstructed headroom in the attic space above the access can't be less than 30 inches. So wherever that access point is, you got to be able to get your head up in there and get 30 inches of yourself in there before you run into any rafters or any other ceiling members. Townhomes and condominiums have separate codes, and the codes are all focused around when you have adjacent properties with a shared wall, how do you slow down or prevent the passage of fire from one location to the adjacent property? So I'm not going to go into the details associated with that, but I am going to provide you with a couple of the code numbers and also here's some search terms. Holy crap, that was some kind of land speed record. Didn't think we were going to pull that one off. Like, subscribe, do that thing. Have a great day.